Call to order the Sioux Falls City Council Fiscal Committee meeting for January 2nd, 2018. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have written 2018 every time that I needed to write the year today, and so I don't have to write checks though either, so that's probably a good thing. Glad to have you all here. As is often the case with the Fiscal Committee, the Carnegie Town Hall is packed to the gills, and we appreciate all of you being here too, and those of you watching us on either television or the internet. We appreciate your participation in city government. I am going to start with a approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion?
I would move to approve the minutes as presented.
And seconded.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We're going to talk today about, this committee has been in the process of reviewing nonprofit contracts between the city and various private agencies in the city of Sioux Falls. We started, last spring or summer with Prairie View Prevention, and we went through that at length, and it's my hope that we won't spend as much time on some of these others that are in the budget for Sioux Falls. The ones that we're going to look at today are on a handout that's also available on the public table and is on the screen. So most of these contracts, or many of the contracts that that we'll talk about, are contract for services, and then some of them are actually for things that if the city did not contract with someone for these services, that the city would have to establish some sort of entity to provide those services. And then that's different from some of the organizations that we provide city support to, private organizations. And so we're going to have our budget analyst, Dave Bixler, walk us through this, and we're going to then kind of talk about what our next steps are. So, Mr. Bixler, would you help us with this?
Certainly. David Bixler, Budget Analyst, City Council. On the first sheet here, I've got the review of what was budgeted for 2017 and compared to 2018, and the reconciliation between the two. And for 2017, there was $2.4 million budgeted, and the recommended budget for 18 was $2.2 million, a difference of about $236,000. Of that, the council amended back in $231,730 to bring back the funding to a lot of these agencies to the level that they had been at before. And so actually in total then the budget has actually gone down for the third-party nonprofit contracts by about $4,000. And then here also in the recommended council budget that was not amended was the Sioux Falls, or the Sioux Empire Arts Council for planning and building service, or through planning and building services. That was reduced by $11,750,000. The Multicultural Center was adjusted down on their utilities based on actuals, so that was reduced by $10,000. Habitat for Humanity was increased by $11,000, and that's a federal pass-through. And the 211 disaster service was increased by $2,832. The Humane Society and Second Chance was also increased by $3,966, which is part of a contract, a 5-year contract that the Animal Services contracted with the Humane Society. So then, excuse me. And then so when we get to the other side of the document, we looked at what was reviewed, and service was the funding was justified, was about $1.6 million, which was about 65% of what was budgeted and or what was amended. And then
I'm going to ask, can we have Jim David, can you move that slide for us, please, so that we're looking at the second page on the slides?
We're still on the first page.
Oh, I thought you said we're on the second page.
No, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
If you look about 3/4 of the way down, you'll see the 65,000 or 65%.
Okay, I apologize. This is somewhat complex, and I just want to make sure that those that are watching are understanding what we're talking about. So thank you for helping.
Certainly. So of the dollars that were amended through the budget. 65% of the dollars have been reviewed and justified, and we're still at 35%. We still need to come to a conclusion with. Now we'll go to the second page. The committee determined that there was no further review required for the top table of contract services. Again, as Councilor Erfenbach stated, a lot of these are contracted services. They're contracted to the Humane Society, 211 helpline. We're contracted for services, so it's not. It's very clear on what the city is getting for their funds, and then also we looked at others that are providing services that if the city would not fund and they would go away, the city would have to end up taking on those responsibilities at a far greater cost than what is being taken place right now. And then you'll see that off to the right are the amendments for a couple of these contracts that were impacted, the Bishop Dudley Warming House, and then also the USD Discovery District was amended by $50,000. Now the second table is the fiscal committee still needs to review these contracts and determine what the process is going forward. I will make you aware that the Southeastern Behavioral Homeless Outreach for Mental Health, that's the PATH program, that has come through already on the consent agenda last week, and it was approved because of grant funding, 100% match, and it needed to, so we didn't want to have that impacted, but we still want to review that service. And then the Sioux Empire Arts Council is going to be on the consent agenda this evening.
Okay, so I would remind the group that we've done this conversation back and forth through emails and other conversations, and we did, as Mr. Bixler has set out this list, the top part of the list are ones that we've sort of agreed in an ad hoc fashion that we wouldn't review them anymore, that we would just allow those numbers to go through and continue in the 2018 budget. But if there are things that we do want to bring forward, we certainly can do that. But again, just in the interest of, we know the things that we really need to be aware of and more and deserve more study, that those are not among those from our own conversations. So the bottom half of that page is what we're looking at in terms of what we have projected that we would like to review as a committee. And it has been my understanding, again, from the conversations of the group, that we would like to see some kind of reporting from each of those organizations. So, Mr. Bixler, you have kind of a proposal for how we would go about this. Do you want to share that with the group, and then we can kind of react as council members?
I requested some information, just the financial key points to look at, and I think it would probably be beneficial for the committee if he would have these over the next few months or whatever it might be, have these different entities present their mission, discuss their mission, and the services they provide to the fiscal committee.
We're kind of talking about that. What do we get for the dollars that the city is putting out? And I realize that, it's not, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a huge amount of money, but it is. It has become more and more part of our conversation. It's especially, in particular, it's coming from the administration that we need to be more aware of these things, these items that we're paying for. But it's also that idea of what is the precedent again? What is the precedent for where we're putting city tax dollars and what it's going to be used for? And so that's been kind of the basis for our conversation as a group. So questions from council members for Mr. Bixler in terms of these particular organizations and how we might move forward? Councilor Rolfing?
I have a couple, Mr. Bixler, my accounting, okay? You guys always drive me bananas. The $1.5 million and 800, I see that makes it $2.4 million. right? Why don't we have numbers in the, to see what we are giving to their, of the 1,000,005, and this 100, the 110 is included in the 1,000,005, right?
Correct.
Okay. We didn't want to publicize that, or what?
That was my direction, to just put in the amount that was amended.
Okay.
Otherwise, the numbers are public in the budget. I asked him the same thing before the meeting. They're public in the budget. They haven't changed. They are the ones that we approved.
Right.
We certainly, as a group, can look at them, and the public can as well. It's not that we're hiding them. He's really just highlighting the changes that the council approved from previous budgets.
How
So
many then of these, this group review, how many of the surveys, if you will, did you receive back, and from whom?
I've received almost all of them. There are a few that I'm still waiting on, obviously. And there's been some changes in some of the organizations, so I've got to get those cleared up. But for the most part, I would say I have 3 of these on the list that I need to get.
you're missing 3, is what you're saying.
Missing
Okay.
3. And one other thing I want to point out is that each of these entities that we reached out to, they explained exactly what the Sioux Falls funding is, not just what their entire funding is, because they have multiple sources, but they're talking specifically of what they're doing with the dollars that the Sioux Falls City Council is providing.
Sometimes that can get a little murky. We've learned that the Sioux Falls dollars are part of a larger picture and maybe get lost. And so I think that's one of the concerns. I don't mean to speak for the group, but that's my understanding, is that's our biggest concern, is what do Sioux Falls dollars do for each of these organizations? Yes, Councilor Erickson.
Thank you. Can I ask I want to just back up a little bit and ask just a couple questions. In regards to the ones that there's no further review required, do we have agreements for each of them?
We do.
We have actual agreements on every single one of those for the no further review,
Yes.
with what we get for the best bang for our buck, and what you're doing, and how you're reporting, and who you report to, and all of that. That's all
Correct.
included. Okay, so of the ones below that fiscal committee will review, how many of those do not have agreements right now?
Well, right now, I'm going to say for 2018, there are no agreements
For any of those down below?
or above.
Oh, that's what I mean.
There are no agreements right now because it's all dependent upon what comes from this committee.
But have we had them in the past?
We have had them in the past on both, for the entire list.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I just want to
And
make
some
sure.
might be multiple years again, so.
Right, like Ford Sioux Falls is a 5-year deal, and so we have multiple years for that. And the other ones that are single years, usually it's just renewing based on funding and based
Amending.
on approval by the council for those, and amending those contracts. Okay, that makes sense. If I may ask one more question, Madam Chair, or I guess just bring this to the committee's attention. The 2 that are under Parks and Rec, I recently was in a meeting with a school board member and brought this up and said, it's my understanding that we're talking about this and nothing's been decided yet, but we are going to review them further. And I kind of extended the olive branch to them to say, would you be interested in meeting with this school board member as well as Dr. Maher? And the answer was yes, obviously. And so if there's any interest of this committee or a couple of us sitting down and talking about that partnership, because that really is with the school, the VOA and the YMCA one really is in connection with after school. So just getting their perception and discussing it with them. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not asking them to pay. I'm not asking any of that. It's really just a matter of, let's discuss this, how this works as a joint venture, and if it makes sense for us to do it, if it makes sense for them to do it, or what does it look like. So that is certainly an option as well, and I know we did that as well with past.
Right, that's
Groups.
valuable. Good.
And I'd be happy to do that. If it's taking our budget analyst and going and sitting down. If anybody wants to come with, that's fine too, but I'd be happy to do that as well.
What's the rest of the group feel about that?
Or maybe we invite them into when we bring the group in. I mean, whatever you all think.
Yeah,
Cool with that?
good.
Counselor Starr, thoughts on that? Okay. Would we prefer kind of a exploratory group going out and talking with them, or should we just bring them in?
I'm fine
It
with.
just becomes more complicated when you have a ton of people coming in, but we
Right.
certainly can. And
I'm
especially
fine
if
with
we did
whatever.
those together, the
Right.
VOA and the YMCA, the after-school programs, like you
Right.
said.
I just didn't know if we wanted to do a preliminary meeting with the school district to talk about that, and then, continue to have them involved as well.
There's some value in that, I think.
Yeah.
Preliminary.
If Counselor Erickson is willing to do that, maybe Mr. Bixler could go with her.
Right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
That
Okay.
might be a,
Okay.
Just like I said, a preliminary, sharing information and talking
Yes.
about what it looks like from the two. Because I do see, I mean, I know that we're not talking about the, maybe the nuts and bolts of these, but I do certainly see the value. We live close to a library and close to a middle school as well as elementary school, and recently we received an email from the school saying unsupervised children at the library needed to rein it in a little bit. There's been some issues, and so we want to be mindful of that, and having these organized groups certainly provide that value versus maybe having it be a free-for-all and people running around all over the place.
Right. Well, and think of the example of the Oakview Library. We've set up city programming in order to manage those unsupervised
Right.
young people in that situation. So certainly, the city is already partnering in some of that as it is. So that, I think that's valid. That's part of the conversation. Okay, so we'll just have the minutes reflect that you're going to kind of do some preliminary work with them, and you'll work with Mr. Bixler to get something scheduled as a presentation then for this group in the future. Those both, I would imagine, could be on the same day. Are there any others that you think we want to just kind of chat with them before we have them come in, or are we okay with just kind of
If I
having him
might,
schedule?
Volunteers of America, now they're one that has really changed their programming, but they're still remained to the service that they're funding or getting funded through the city. But their services have really expanded over the last 2 years, year and a half. And so some of these entities, it might be a good just refresher to make sure that you're
Yeah, that's true. Some of those organizations in the past, when they were I know they've just, in the last few days, moved out of the Bowdoin Center, which is just down the street from where we are right now. We've toured that location and seen the kind of programming that they do now. I'm feeling kind of at a loss in terms of what are they doing now, and so it would be, I think you're right, it would be helpful to have them come in and just say, hey, here's what we're doing now, and then let's talk about what's that subsidy look like or not, or however it's going to work out. So I think there's some value in that, but let you guys kind of do that preliminary meeting with them. Other thoughts on any of these items specifically?
Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead.
So the process that we're going to go through here then is to look at the reviewable ones. And ask them to come in to one of our meetings and make a short presentation. Okay, will that be at next month's meeting then?
I don't think we're
we
going to
need
do
to
them
make
all.
some
Right, I know,
decisions,
we
don't
need
we?
to get moving, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Should we do it all in one meeting? I mean, I don't know that we necessarily have time to do it all in one meeting,
Well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
right? If they each take 10 minutes, that's,
It's an
over an hour,
hour
right?
20 minutes.
If we have a light informational, or if there's an informational that is not scheduled, we could always start it earlier as well.
Yeah.
Right, and on a night like tonight, when there was no informational at
Right.
all, we could have started this meeting at 4 o'clock and gone till 6. So I guess I'm not uncomfortable with that, having them all come in at the
Think
same
we'd
time.
better
Just
get
jam
moving
through
on it.
them,
Yep.
and we have a decision then in
Tell 'em-
March. So
yep.
we meet with them in February, we have a decision in March. Yes? Is that what I'm hearing?
Sounds good.
Consensus of the group?
If we need to roll some over into the first part of Marches, we could do that too.
Well, this committee meets first week of the month, so that kind of, well, yeah, we can kind of
But I
see,
mean,
maybe
if
we'll
we
have
got
to.
through 6 of them and we needed to have 2 of them come back in
Sure.
early March,
Gotcha.
then we could discuss and make a recommendation from there.
Okay. We good with that? Okay, have we done what you need us to do? Do we
I
need
have
more?
one more question.
Okay.
and that is the top list, the no further review is required. Can I pass it along to the administration and also those entities so they can start getting their contracts prepared for 2018?
Thoughts from the group?
Well, I would just ask, maybe, do we need to inform the council? Do we need to, what do we need to do? I mean, we already voted on it as a whole council, and all the money was restored, so it does not take council action to do that. Now, if maybe the remainder of the council maybe disagrees with us and they choose to bring a cut, that can be proposed, but it does not take council action for that. For that, it does take council action, excuse me. But we already did vote in favor of restoring the funding.
Right. We approved the budget
So-
and plus some. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start because there's four of us, four council members sitting up here, and there are two in the audience right now. I'm going to ask your thoughts, Councilor Neitzer and Councilor Staley. How would you like us to, do we need to make some sort of formal notification to the council? You can certainly come speak or just nod your head or give me the high sign, whatever. Go ahead, Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you, Greg Neitzer. I think maybe, I don't know about how formal it needs to be, but something would be helpful. And maybe right now, I don't necessarily have an objection. I just would, maybe a little bit of illumination of the methodology or how it was decided what would be above the line and below the line, because it's the first time I've seen the list. So, and I don't have an opinion because I don't have enough information to be able to make one, but just what your general thought processes, because I don't think all of these are contracts for services.
Right, that's
so
correct.
Some are not. So what made some fall above and below? And I mean, at least maybe an email for a discussion, but if you could just illuminate
Okay.
that.
Email or maybe we do a quick 5 minutes at an informational meeting so that it's not just an email among us. I mean, I'm always concerned
and
about an email among us
That might be an
because then
idea.
the public doesn't
Just
see
have a
it,
free
right?
form discussion, get consensus.
Yeah. Councilor Staley?
And I would also like to add that any individuals you bring in, I think it would be beneficial if it was done in here so that we could
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
watch it in case
Yep.
we can't be here. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate that input. So I do think, again, just kind of going from, because I'm the chair, I'm going to say we're going to do an informational, we'll do 15 minutes on the agenda next weekish. We have notes from the conversations that we've had about this. We'll just put those notes into a format so that you'll see, yes, many of those above the line are contracts for services. Some of them are, Bishop Dudley is one of them, that it was, no, we don't necessarily have a contract with them. We have an agreement with them, but it's one that's near and dear to the hearts of all of us, and we know the council voted to increase their allotment, and so that was one we just felt like we weren't going to touch. But those would be the kinds of thoughts that we'll just kind of put into those notes, and we'll present it at an informational if we can get on next week's agenda. That would be awesome. Otherwise, other thoughts from the group? Think that'll work? I'm getting yes from Councilor Rolfing and Councilor Starr, Councilor Erickson as well. So what we'll do then is we'll present that just very briefly, Mr. Bixler, and we can just bounce off, the whole group can kind of just add it. We'll just have you come to the podium for the informational. And then we'll move forward with this meeting. The Fiscal Committee will have each of those organizations that's below the line. We'll have some kind of representation and the opportunity to present a brief, this is who we are, this is what we do, but a very specific, here's what we do with your X number of dollars that are Sioux Falls City tax dollars. Yes?
Yes, but I think we should just refer to it as the second table, not below the line.
Sorry, you're right. It is. It's a second table. Visually, it's below the line, Mr. Bixler. Give me that, but it
Okay.
is the second table. It is the one that we have, by consensus, agreed they're the ones we wanted to see. Other thoughts, comments?
I'm just wondering if Counselor Erickson, if her son needed a little help from my grandson, they could probably raise a little bit more trouble at that school or library.
No.
No? No?
All right. We don't need to take action on that item, but we know we have kind of our marching orders going forward. Our next item on the agenda is open discussion. Anything for this group, conversation-wise? All right, moving on, then I am going to adjourn this meeting. This full city council meets at 7 o'clock. Adjourned.